Here is a quick overview of what we will cover. We will cover origins of the demand curve, neoclassical micro-utility maximizing consumers, the market demand curve, change in relative price alters incomes, income growth alters distribution if tastes differ, application, a deregulated industry walkthrough, summary, how the lecture fits together. We will start with the foundations, build step by step, and end by tying the ideas together. The demand curve shows how much of a product people want at different prices. Put more directly, the demand curve represents the relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded, illustrating that as prices fall, demand typically increases. For example, if the price of apples drops from $2 to $1, more people will buy apples. What this example shows is that lower prices lead to higher demand, which is a fundamental principle of the demand curve. Understanding the demand curve is crucial for predicting how changes in price will affect consumer behavior and overall market demand. Once that is clear, the next step is neoclassical micro-utility maximizing consumers, because it develops the next piece of the same argument. Consumers aim to get the most satisfaction from their purchases based on their budget. Put more directly, utility maximizing consumers make choices that maximize their satisfaction given their income and the prices of goods. For example, if a consumer has $10 and bananas cost $1 each, while coconuts cost $2 each, they will buy more bananas to maximize their utility. What this example shows is that consumers will allocate their budget to purchase more of the goods that provide them with the highest satisfaction relative to their cost. Understanding how consumers maximize utility helps us predict demand patterns in the market, which is essential for businesses and policymakers. Once that is clear, the next step is the market demand curve, because it develops the next piece of the same argument. The market demand curve combines the demands of all consumers in the market. Put more directly, the market demand curve is derived by summing the individual demand curve of all consumers for a particular good at various prices. For example, if 5 consumers each want 2 bananas at $1, the market demand at that price is 10 bananas. What this example shows is that this example illustrates how individual demands add up to create the total market demand, showing the overall consumption behavior at a given price. Understanding the market demand curve helps businesses and economists analyze how changes in price will affect total sales and market dynamics. Once that is clear, the next step is change in relative price alters incomes, because it develops the next piece of the same argument. When the price of one good changes, it can affect the income of different consumers. Put more directly, a change in the relative price of a good can alter the real income of consumers, impacting their purchasing power and demand. For example, if the price of bananas drops, the banana owner's income may decrease, while the buyer's income effectively increases. What this example shows is that a price drop can have different effects on consumers, leading to changes in demand based on their individual circumstances. Recognizing how price changes affect income is vital for understanding shifts in market demand and consumer behavior. Once that is clear, the next step is income growth alters distribution if tastes differ, because it develops the next piece of the same argument. When income increases, consumers may change their buying habits based on their preferences. Put more directly, income growth can alter the distribution of demand among goods, especially if consumers have different tastes. For example, if both Crusoe and Friday experience a rise in income, Crusoe may buy more luxury bananas, while Friday buys more coconuts. What this example shows is that as income rises, consumers may prioritize different goods based on their preferences, leading to changes in demand distribution. Understanding how income growth affects demand is essential for businesses to tailor their offerings to changing consumer preferences. Once that is clear, we can pull the whole lecture together and see the full logic in one connected chain. Consider a hypothetical telecom industry that has just been deregulated. A textbook model would expect many new firms to enter, prices to fall, and the old monopoly to quickly lose control. But once we apply the logic from this lecture, the picture changes. Several variables move together at the same time: network scale, financing, product quality, customer lock-in, and the speed of innovation. Origins of the demand curve tells us why the industry cannot be reduced to one simple adjustment. Neoclassical, micro-utility maximizing consumers, and the market demand curve? Explain why small changes can snowball, once several variables feed back on one another. Income growth alters distribution if tastes differ, tells us to read competition as a process of innovation, response, and strategic adjustment over time. That is why one firm can still dominate if it innovates faster or controls a better network, even after entry is opened up. So the application is not just that competition changes prices. It changes industry structure through feedback, strategy, and innovation. Return to the deregulated telecom example. Origins of the demand curve explains why the industry has to be treated as a system rather than a single price story. Neoclassical micro-utility maximizing consumers explains why a small advantage in cost, scale, or customer lock-in can grow into a much bigger market outcome. The market demand curve adds the point that once several variables move together, the path of the industry becomes much harder to predict in a simple equilibrium model. The slide on change in relative price alters incomes explains why stability depends on where the market is, how far it has been pushed, and which feedback loops are dominating. Finally, income growth alters distribution if tastes differ, shows why competition in that industry has to be modeled as a process of entry, innovation, differentiation, and response over time. So the theory and the case now line up. Real markets are complex adaptive systems, and that is why static textbook competition misses so much of what actually happens.